here we go. It's time to start writing the essay. On the top right, we have the essay format. When you go into the exam, this should be in your head. On the bottom right, we have our plan. You're going to be writing your plan like this in the exam. So now let's assume we took 5 minutes to plan. And so we have about 30 minutes to write, and that'll give us another 5 minutes in which we can double check our essay and make sure there are no errors. Okay, so I'm going to start with, of course, the hook of my intro. I think that's a good hook. It introduces the theme of the essay in a kind of interesting way. Don't take too long to think about your hook. Just write something fun and get started. Something interesting. It doesn't make sense to spend 5-10 minutes thinking about how to land a good hook. I need to mention the poems in relation to the hook. Writing the title of this poem. So long. Okay, is that good enough? I think I need to make this a little bit more specific because we're going into decision making. We're dealing with parental issues in general, but we're zoning in on decision making. So, in particular, okay, so we have our hook, and I've mentioned the poems, and it's clear what this essay will be about. Now I need to go to part. I need to answer the first part. Let's start with little boy crying and what his decision is. This is where I would reference my plan, right here. Just need to make sure the sentence actually sounds good in the essay. But we already have the idea written down. By the way, note that I have the poems, the name of the poems in inverted commas, and make sure you put the title of the poems inverted commas. And for the first time you mention the poems, it's good to mention the poet's first and last names. First and last name. That really shows a better understanding of the text and more knowledge of the readings on the syllabus. But after you mention their first and last names, if you want to mention them again, last name alone should be fine. But not first name alone, because they're not your friends, right? Where were we? Little boy crying. So now that I've mentioned this part, just for better flow, I can also just link it to this, because I'll be talking about how the father feels. So where necessary, where logical, you can shift around the sentences a bit to make sure your essay flows as smoothly as possible. So this is his decision. He decides to. Note I'm using the present tense, not the father decided to. He decides to. The father must decide. So the poems, when you're talking about the poems, you talk about them in the present tense, as if the poem is still present. The poem is still present. The events of the poem might be in the past, but the text itself is in the present. And so that's how you make reference to the text. So the poem, the father decides to him really significantly. Okay, significantly. It sounds a little ambiguous. A father must decide. The father decides to slap the boy, a decision that impacts him. Him who? The boy or the father? So sometimes with pronouns, it's unclear who you're talking about, because I mentioned a father and a son. This him could be either. So okay to disambiguate when necessary. About the devices, both poems rely on metaphors. That's looking good. Answer part 1 of question: what decision does each parent make in each poem? Let's start with a nice little mini intro, just a 1-sentence intro for the paragraph. All about the flow. Let's get down to business. And note that I didn't just repeat word for word. The father must decide whether and how to discipline his son. I don't want this to sound too repetitive, so I say the same thing, just in a different way. He must decide what to do when he sees his son playing in the rain. Standing by the idea that he should not, and I can remember, he dares not ruin the lessons you should learn. Standing by the idea that he should not. The lessons, but you doesn't fit because I'm talking about the son in third person. So whenever you're inserting your own word, into a quotation from the poem, just to improve clarity or flow or grammar, you use square brackets. So the marker knows that this is actually your input. They won't find the sun in the poem. But you shouldn't change the meaning of the quotation, but it's just to improve the flow. So standing by the idea that he should not ruin the lessons the son should learn. Say his son, since we're talking about the father. It's always good when you can, if it might be too difficult to quote line numbers, because remembering every single line from all 20 poems is a bit much. But it would be good if you could remember at least what stanzas things happen in, especially when it comes to the first and last stanzas. It's a bit more impressive when you can mention, as stated in the first or second or last stanza. Shows a deeper knowledge of the text. To add one more quotation from the poem. Whenever you make a point, if you can add one or two actual quotations or examples from the poem, that's excellent. You must not make a plaything of the rain. I remember the father saying that. So that's the actual last line of the poem. It's not just about knowing the ideas in the poems, it's also about knowing some critical lines word for word, so you can actually quote them. Of course, whenever you quote, you use the inverted commas. You add your own words within a quotation, you add square brackets. This is kind of an advanced tool, but you can use it. All the better. Okay, I'm done with Little Boy Crying. Here we go again with this long title. I'm kind of connecting the two poems. The speaker face is a much graver, so I'm kind of comparing the decision that she has to make to the decision that this father has to make in Little Boy Crying. It's a comparative essay, so it's not about just listing points for point A and points for point B. It's really about relating the two poems, showing how they're similar, how they're different, how they connect. So whenever you can connect them, you should definitely do so. Even in a subtle way like this, by comparing the decision each parent has to make. So this is kind of a double decision. She has to first decide whether she's going to raise the son in the first place, but then she has to decide how to raise her son. This is going to be important because she raised him twice, so this is kind of how she raised the son. Kind of one decision, but with a part A and a part B to it. You can look at it that way. Carried him full term on the tight up. Was it tight up? Tight. Oh. Yeah, I think that's correct. The use of the semicolon here. Whenever you're quoting something that doesn't just slide into a sentence like this quotation, you use this to kind of just attach it. So whenever you quote something, for example, I quoted this metaphor here, it's good to follow up with some kind of explanation. So I mentioned she carried him full term, and then the following stanza is going to explain basically what this means. It shows that you don't only know what is in the poem in terms of the language used, but you know what that language means. This is good enough for part 1. The decision made in Little Boy Crying. And I've done a few quotations. I mentioned the decision made in The Woman Speaks. And I've done a few quotations. So that's fine. I'm going to talk about the impact made on this father here. He feels guilty. So I'm going to start with a little opener. Each paragraph needs an opening sentence. It's not necessarily a hook, but you need to start the paragraph in a way that tells the reader what the paragraph is going to go into. Even though this paragraph is going to be talking about the impact on one character, you can, since the entire essay is about 2 poems, you can kind of give a general statement about what happens in both poems and then zone in on one poem. That's one way to do it. Ends up feeling guilty. How do I make that sound a little more impressive? Immense guilt. Ends up feeling immense guilt. Like in high school, I just could not spell the word discipline. It hasn't gotten much better. Thankfully, we have autocorrect. You will not have autocorrect in the exams. I'm sorry about that, guys. Let's lobby for autocorrect and copy and paste. Those would be pretty handy. Okay, so the boy cries and protests and sees his father as a monster. Yes. Relate this back to the poem, kind of reference the poem itself. This is described two stanzas. I think so. I'll have to double check all of these quotations afterwards. I'm not looking at the poem now because that would be cheating. Sad is a nice word. You know, he's just pretending. Pretends that he's all strict and he doesn't care, he's not feeling anything. We know this because of the metaphor of the mask. The mask represents that kind of pretense. So he feels, I want to say guilty again? Powerful, I might change that word later. Yeah, definitely need to reference something now. Haven't quoted anything yet. Something to hurt your easy tears. Called him with? Yes. So whenever you're quoting a line, but you're starting in the middle of the line, you put the ellipsis, these three little dots, just to show that you know that something is missing. But of course, if you don't remember or you don't need the entire line, then you use the ellipsis and that's fine. I've gotten better at spelling discipline. Be a good time to bring up that mask line. Cannot something. Yes, the wavering hidden behind that mask. Yes, I'm sure of it. Pair that on the father also punishes himself. Alright, so does this really talk about the impact enough? Mention the decision again. He feels guilty. There are some quotations. Yeah, okay. Let's move along. We're on to part 3 already. Almost done. The devices that portray challenges of parenting. So our little opening line. It's 2 points. The challenges of parenting are portrayed using metaphor. Start with the woman. Her struggle as a single mother. Devoted single mother. Then you can add in some descriptive language to give a deeper sense of who these characters are. She's devoted, isn't she? Single mother. Brought out through raise him twice. This is where I need to add that in. Well, as her hopelessness. She did feel hopeless toward the end. I think we've done enough for the woman, so we move on to little boy crying. Mother is described. The son's perspective to be an ogre. That word is actually in the poem. What else? And there were three things: ogre, titan. No, not titan. Ogre. Giant. I said titan because in the analysis video of this poem, I used a clip of a titan from Shingeki no Kyojin, Attack on Titan, to visualize that part. Okay, ogre, grim giant, and a colossal cruel. Beautiful language in this poem. You might have noticed I can remember more lines from Little Boy Crying than I can remember from The Woman Speaks. This might be the case where you're able to quote more direct lines from one poem because you just have a better memory of that poem. That's fine as long as you achieve some kind of balance. You still want to quote as it pertains to. You still want to make quotations from both poems, but if you quote from one a little bit more than the other, that's also fine. Wait for it. That is meted out, or that is given to, the hatred and resentment that is meted out to the father disciplines his son. And again, remember exactly. Okay, yeah, he did. He wears a mask, which there are scars. Important metaphor. So I need to kind of tell what this metaphor means. This speaks to, so when you're doing the final part talking about devices, you don't just want to quote or give examples of devices. You want to kind of explain what the devices mean in the context of the poem. So this speaks to the challenge. Okay. So now we just need to conclude. So for your conclusion, you basically want to wrap everything up. Just make some final connections between the poems and basically tell what you have learned by looking at these two poems. You can start your conclusion with a hook if you have the time to think about one. There is no esteem to children that parents always know what decision to make, always able to navigate the impacts. Poems suggest otherwise. This is kind of a complex sentence. There's no manual or textbook for parenting. And while it may seem to children that parents always know what decision to make and are always able to navigate the impacts of such decisions, as children, we tend to think that parents have it all figured out. These poems suggest otherwise. So I'm going to mention the poems once more. Here I can just mention poet's name. Morris's Little Boy Crying. And good distance. Oh boy. It's basically what I learned from these two poems. The poems show how complex and challenging parenthood can be. Okay, I think I'm happy with this. This essay took about 35 minutes to write, or a bit less than that, and we took about 5 minutes to plan, so I have a little bit less time than I would want to have to review my essay. But I think this is good. We have a solid intro that does everything right. We tackle each question, each part of the question, and we have a nice short and spicy conclusion. So that's it. So now with the remaining time I have for this question, I just double check everything, reread, iron out, whatever errors there are. If you spot errors, you can take a screenshot of this. I'll also copy and paste this into the video description, so you can reference that and let me know what you think. Next time we'll be looking at question 4 from the 2019 paper. So see you then.